So the other piece that we have to consider and take a look at is um, when we have an event that's triggered or an event that gets, is fired, who or what elements have the opportunity to handle that event? Well, it turns out that if I click on this button here, which says click me, I can see that it has several parent elements that it is encapsulated in, or kind of the other way, we could say that this div has several different descendants that are contained within it. So if you think about it, when I click on this button, I'm not just clicking on this button. I'm clicking on this button, I'm clicking on this list item, I'm clicking on this unordered list, and ultimately I'm clicking on this div. And this kind of continues all the way up until it reaches the top of the document. And so I like to demonstrate this because I think this is kind of an interesting thing to observe. So what's the easiest way for me to demonstrate this event bubbling? I have a little snippet of code here that I want to talk about because I think it's kind of cool. Here I'm declaring a variable, and I'm going to leverage a vanilla JavaScript functionality, and it's query selector all. And query selector all basically it's kind of like what jQuery does. So whenever you see query selector all, you can kind of think of that a little bit, sort of, kind of like this little $sign. So I could say jQuery find me all elements, and that's what this little snippet would do here. Or I can say, hey, vanilla JavaScript, go ahead and find me every element. And that's what this asterisk selector means, get me everything. And now that I have all these elements, I need to iterate over each one of them and assign them event listeners. Well, what I can do is I can use a for of loop in vanilla JavaScript to make this happen. So I'm going to say of all of the elements that I found on my page, which is everything, go ahead and give me each element one at a time. And as I iterate over each of these elements, I'm going to call the add event listener, and I'm going to listen for the click event, and I'm just going to log the particular element that I happen to be at this moment. So what's going to happen is I should see everything that I've clicked on logged out to the console. Let's observe this. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this little snippet and come over to really any page. It does not matter. Open up my console, paste this little snippet in, and run. So now what's happened is I've registered a whole bunch of event listeners. And and actually there's something really interesting that I could show you since I did this. And let me go ahead and let me actually reload this page because I want to show you something and then also show you how the page has changed. Notice some of these tags, there's nothing behind them. It's just kind of like an empty space. But other tags, such as this div, notice that it has a little event tag behind it. And when I click on it, it's going to show me all the different event listeners that happens to be on this particular element. And you can see that there's focus in, focus out, mouse over, right? There's all sorts of different events that have been registered to this particular element. And some of these other ones don't have anything. Well, when I run this little snippet of code here, you should see that every element now has an event. And if I click on it, it's actually a click event that I just registered. So this is really helpful to see kind of what events have been associated, or listeners have been associated to different elements. So I hope that this made clear that everything on my page right now has at least a click event associated with it. So now what I'm going to do, I have my console empty here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this input. And you can see that I have so many different elements that I clicked on. And what's interesting about this is you can notice that it ends with the HTML tag, or the root tag. And I'll do this again. I'll click on something else, and it ends with the HTML tag. And I'll click on something. I'll click on this little thing here, and it ends with the HTML tag. So it always ends up going to the same root node every single time, but where it starts is different. And you can actually observe as I start with this first logged entry, and I start moving my mouse down, you can see that the blue box over on the left-hand side is going to gradually get bigger and bigger and bigger until ultimately it's going to take up the entire screen and be my HTML element. So that's what event bubbling is. It started at the most nested element, and it climbed its way up until it got to the top root element, and then the bubble pops, if you will, and the event is done with. So how do I know, in this event bubbling scenario, how do I know which element actually fired the event, or what was the thing that the most nested element that I clicked on? And remember, I said earlier that events will provide details about what actually happened. And there are two very helpful properties that we can use to determine, well, where did this event originate? And those two properties are target and currentTarget. So the way that you can think about this is that target is the element that dispatched the event, is the thing that, in the case that we just looked at, the thing that I clicked on. currentTarget is basically the listener that I'm currently at. So what that means is as I bubble up, as my event bubbles up the DOM, the target is going to remain constant. It's always going to be the same. But the currentTarget is going to change with each parent as it makes its way all the way up to the top. And it also turns out that there is a nice little convenient shorthand for you. The context of an event while it's being executed is set to the currentTarget. So for now, there is some nuance to this, but we're just going to run with the idea that for the most part, asterisk, currentTarget and this are effectively the same thing. There are some cases where that's not true, but I would say in the lion's share of instances that you're working with, this will be the case.